Welcome to RCR Wireless News. I'm Martha DeGrasse, and our topic today is wireless infrastructure services. I'd like to introduce you to your panelists for today. Joe Madden is Principal Analyst at Mobile Experts. Joe, thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks for having me, Martha.
Jason Campbell is Vice President of Services at Smartlink, our sponsor today. Jason, thank you so much for being part of the webinar.
Great to be here. Thank you for having me.
And Alan Jones is here. He is Senior Vice President at Spire Wireless. Alan, we're so glad you could join us.
Thank you for allowing us to join, Martha.
And I'm Martha DeGrasse with RCR Wireless News. A quick word about RCR Wireless News. We are a premier news source for the wireless communications industry, covering carrier, network, device, test and measurement, and telecom software news. Follow us at rcrwireless.com and on Twitter at RCR Wireless News. I'd also like to direct your attention to a feature report on the wireless infrastructure companies. This is the resource for the wireless infrastructure companies that serve this industry. The webinar today will be going through a lot of topics, but not detailing out the list of companies. So this feature report is your best resource for that. And this will be publishing August 13th on our website. If you can find it from the RCR Wireless homepage, up at the top, click Reports, and you will find all the feature reports there. A few quick key takeaways from this report. The recent slowdown in carrier spending is seen as a temporary setback. Carriers have spent billions on spectrum, and that spectrum will be useless unless they use infrastructure to deploy that spectrum. But it has been a painful setback, and smaller contractors have been impacted much more than larger companies. Some smaller contractors do not have the financial resources to weather a temporary setback in spending, and some of them have actually been acquired now by larger companies, and we go into that again in the feature report. With the notable exceptions of AT&T Mobility and Verizon, most carriers rely on equipment vendors to manage all or part of their infrastructure deployments. So that would be Nokia, Ericsson. These companies manage a lot of this activity for most carriers. AT&T and Verizon do it differently than that, and they do it differently from one another. And again, that's all laid out in the report. And finally, infrastructure service providers are merging and consolidating. There are a few reasons for this. For one, the carriers are much more interested in working with entities that can self-perform a lot of this work with less subcontracting. So that argues for larger firms. And then again, as some of the smaller companies have run into financial difficulties, they have found buyers. Again, this report is publishing August 13th. If you would like me to send you a link, feel free to email me. I am Martha at rcrwireless.com. Now, at this time, we are going to hear from Joe Madden of Mobile Experts.
Okay, thank you, Martha. Well, let me be brief because I want to get into the meat of the discussion today. I'll just spend a moment to introduce my company. Mobile Experts has been around for more than 10 years now, publishing market analysis primarily related to the radio access network. We're up to 6 analysts now, plus some office staff. Most of us are based in Silicon Valley, but we have people in Canada and China and in the UK and around the world now as well. The thing that's different about Mobile Experts is that each one of our analysts is at least a 20-year expert in their respective topic. So we don't have general analysts. We rely on people that are very specifically experienced in things like backhaul or Wi-Fi or radio access. And so that's what our market forecasts are based on. We publish on base stations and small cells and DAS and handsets and even 5G now. The one slide I wanted to get to today has to do with our big picture view of how investment is shifting in the industry. You know, there's been kind of a steady trend of mobile operators spending $50 billion a year or so on radio access infrastructure, and you know, plus billions more on their core networks and other things. But with a steady appetite of $50 billion or so in radio equipment, the industry has gotten sort of comfortable around that. But things are shifting now, and what we're seeing is that the mobile data is shifting from being really mobile focused over the macro network to now being Wi-Fi first and then mobile second. If you look at data from people like Mobidia and other people that track the actual movement of data through a smartphone, it used to be about 50-50 between Wi-Fi and cellular, but now it's more like 75% of the data going through smartphones is going over an unlicensed band. And we expect that trend to continue into the 85 to 90% range. So we see that private Wi-Fi and carrier Wi-Fi are going to really carry the bulk of the data, and also indoor solutions such as small cells that include such things as license-assisted access or LWA, LTE Wi-Fi aggregation. You know, these kinds of options are moving most of the data traffic indoors onto lower power solutions, and therefore I think the services companies have to adapt to this. It's not just about climbing towers anymore. We have to be looking at fiber into buildings, gigabit Ethernet in the building, where to place the antennas within a building, whether to use a DAS or a small cell or a Wi-Fi system, and how to combine those things within buildings. So I think the skill set for the services companies and the kind of work that they do is going to dramatically change over the next 5 years.
Yes, we're hearing a lot about that. Thank you for, I'm sorry, go ahead. Did you have more?
No, that's it. Go ahead, Martha.
Okay, well, thank you very much, and I hope we can get into some more of those workforce topics later in the webinar because we do hear a lot about that. At this time, we're going to hear from Jason Campbell of Smartlink.
Great, and thanks so much for the opportunity to talk a little bit about Smartlink and what we do. For those of you who don't know, we are a nationwide staffing and services company providing those services as two business units that complement each other nicely. We have over 15 years of experience and are really uniquely positioned to quickly develop teams and scale locally to meet our customers' needs. Our staffing division really focuses on providing high-quality contingent staffing, temp to perm, and permanent placements. And we've done that with thousands of recruits nationwide, pretty much in every state. We have 30 full-time specialized recruiters that are really focused in on wireless and understand the needs of what our customers are looking for, which is a key differentiator for us. And also a proprietary database of over 49,000 potential recruits. Our services division complements this well, and now we have a national reach. We're operating in 22 markets, and we provide end-to-end service offerings encompassing site development services where we self-perform site acquisition, construction management, and architecture and engineering services, property services, which really focus on embedded network, managing those assets for renewals and managing the property side of the business, and technical services, which deals with equipment installation and integration. The key things that really bind our organization together is our culture. We are competitors at our core, and we really focus and live by 4 really important values that we're talking about every day, which is leadership, leading the charge in industries and providing clear vision, empowerment, empowering our employees to make decisions to help our customers achieve their goals, challenging the status quo, which I think we're going to get into a lot more later as we see the need for densified networks really develop, in innovating and solving problems out there that are impacting the development of wireless and impacting demand. And also preserving our culture. You know, starting 15 years ago as a small company and growing to over 600, 700 employees today, that's important to preserve our culture, preserve our heritage. The next thing you'll find is the, I think we're going to talk a lot about this further in the meeting, is the scalability piece. While we think that that's critically important, it's also very important to have localized forces. And for our services team and our staffing organization, you can see that on the map. We have a high quantity of resources throughout the United States, but we really believe in the power of being local and the importance of being local, especially as we see more and more focus on densified networks and the requirements that it takes to do that.
Okay, thank you very much, Jason. And now we're going to get an introduction to Spire Wireless from Alan Jones.
Thank you, Martha. Spire Wireless, I'm Alan Jones, Senior Vice President of Outside Plant Engineering and Development. And to start off, I just want to give an idea of C-Spire and where the name came from. We are customer inspired, and that's actually what C-Spire is short for. It's our mantra. It's in everything that we do, and that sort of shows as we go through the slides of the history of the company. We started in 1959 actually as Telepex. Telepex is still our parent company today. In 1988, we started our wireless services with Cellular South. In 1999, we found that we needed to really build our network. We launched Telepac Networks to really help drive some of the growth of Cellular South, to build fiber to our sites, provide backhaul, as well as to other customers. In 2011, we came back to look at everything and said, okay, we are customer inspired. We need to take advantage of that and show and let people know that's us. And we came up with the name C-Spire to replace Cellular South for our wireless services. In 2012, we also added business solutions to the C-Spire brand. And then in 2013, Telepac Networks became C-Spire Fiber. So all of those wrap up together to bring us who we are today, which is just C-Spire and the different brands that are underneath the C-Spire brand. So we have got still the largest privately owned wireless communications provider in the U.S., close to 1 million subs there with a large 4G network, and have made quite an investment in that network, especially over the last 3 years. As far as our business solutions, one of the things we did there was build a brand new Tier 3 plus commercial data center in Starkville, Mississippi. That is actually the largest one within about a 200 to 250 mile radius of our area. It allows us to have hosted exchange services, unified communications. We do direct internet access through our business solutions platform. We also have an IP voice platform as part of the C-Spire Business Solutions brand. In C-Spire Fiber, we have over 5,500 miles of fiber, backbone fiber now, since that launch of Telepac Networks in 1999. We've been rated the fastest ISP in the state of Mississippi. We now offer a 1 gigabit per second consumer fiber to the home in 8 cities in the state. And we have a quad play service that offers our customers high definition TV, home phone, and then we add mobile services that we've had since 1988 to that platform as well. That's really it. I appreciate the chance to introduce our company to you.
Thank you very much, Alan. And the first question that we're going to discuss is for you. We see tower assets concentrating now among fewer owners. Verizon and AT&T, of course, have both sold their assets to tower companies, and we're interested in hearing how this changes your business.
Sure. We do view a small change on that. We actually do still own quite a few of our own tower assets, and for the most part, I think it's for us, having multiple tower asset owners out there is actually can be a good thing. Competition is always good in any market, just like the markets we're in. However, we do see some positives to this as well. It brings to the industry some standard practices, some standardized information amongst the individual owner you're dealing with. You don't have to have one particular set of items that you work with when you're dealing with one, and then a different set of needs that a different tower provider owns. So it does sort of bring some good things to the businesses as far as really starting to get some standardization between what's needed out of or for the tower owners from the carriers.
Okay, great. Now we also see infrastructure service providers themselves merging and consolidating. Obviously the biggest is Nokia and Alcatel-Lucent getting together, but there have been several others as well. And Jason, I know that you work a lot with helping these companies staff up and also with their site acquisition needs. So I'm hoping that you can give us a little bit of insight about what this consolidation means, both for carriers and for contractors.
Yeah, so I think it's the net effect is it's good news, a good news story for both carriers and contractors, and I think it really comes down to staying ahead of the demand curve in the densification of networks. I think really the basis for this and the way we look at it as a company is a lot of these are spurred by service diversification as well as the ability to scale. With the increased focus on densifying networks, the quantity and the volume of network enhancements just continues to rise. So that scalability and service diversification is really important. We really see that for carriers and contractors, diversifying service or equipment offerings can provide contractors the edge they need in a competitive environment and provide carriers with a single solution for network deployment. I think Alan mentioned it earlier. How do we simplify things with all of the volume going on, all the volume out there, and the need to densify the networks? I think scaling to stay ahead of capacity curve requires a combination of local expertise and the centralized systems and processes necessary to meet the high quantity demand. So I think we'll continue to see consolidation where service and equipment providers complement each other and provide the scalability needed to really deliver these densified networks over the next 5 to 10 years.
Okay, great. Yeah, it's interesting. You say that the quality of network enhancements is going up, and one part of that is an improving safety record. This year has been much better, I think, than last in terms of tower climber safety. And some in the industry are saying that that's just because things have slowed down a little bit, and so there are fewer inexperienced people being called upon to climb towers, and perhaps that is a big part of it. But we're also hearing that it's the increased professionalization of the workforce. More of the people that are actually working are working for larger companies who do have standardized safety practices and oftentimes safety auditors on site. So I think that may be another big reason that the industry safety track record is improving, and we hope that will continue. At this time, we're going to move on, though, and talk a little bit about site acquisition and some of the drivers behind some of the more urban site acquisition needs. I think a lot of carrier spending is shifting from coverage to more capacity-focused solutions. Joe, can you comment on that a little bit?
Yeah, this is absolutely something we've been tracking, Martha, for the last 8 years. We've been talking about the shift from voice coverage to capacity, and it's something that's been on the minds of the operators for quite some time, but it's a slow process, and we've seen over that 8-year period, we've seen the rise in revenue dependence by the mobile operators changing over from voice to data. Nowadays, they're absolutely dependent on data. Young people don't talk on the phone as much, and they really choose their mobile carrier and churn to a different mobile carrier based on the data capability. So the trend that I think everyone's seen, the curves of mobile data traffic growing and growing. We have those charts too, and it's off the scale as what we used to talk about in terms of the data capacity for a mobile network. I think the issue that the mobile operators are facing is that it's more and more data for the same revenue, and so now they're really changing their capital spending plans to be much more efficient in how they handle the data. They can't just keep deploying more and more towers to handle X amount of data per tower, because that's not going to be a good business model for them. So the operators are absolutely looking at small cells, indoor solutions as a way to shift their spending toward a more efficient way.
And what are some of the more efficient choices they can make there? Because sometimes I think that small cell solutions end up being much more expensive than carriers might think they're going to be at the outset.
Yeah, they can be, and in the United States, with the regulatory environment that we have, it turns out that small cells are not that much cheaper yet. But if you look at Korea, Japan, China, where the regulatory regime is a lot more straightforward, the small cells are quite a bit cheaper, and they're quick to deploy. They handle a lot of capacity. So I think it's really a matter of doing the site acquisition and getting those small cells in place in such a way that I think service companies can play a major role there in facilitating getting those units into the field and getting the approvals from the local government and the state government and so on to make it happen.
Right, right. Well, Jason, that's your area. Can you give us a little bit of insight on some of those boots on the ground site acquisition processes?
Yeah. So I mean, what we're really seeing is the impact that Joe had mentioned is a result of the staying ahead of the capacity curve and densifying these networks. When we densify networks in support of staying ahead of that curve, we inevitably run in and get closer to people, okay? And building networks in areas of higher population density, it challenges the age-old site acquisition questions of leasability. Where can you locate at a reasonable cost, recurring cost, which is very important in this whole discussion. Zonability, can you prove the need for it? And constructability, what are your backhaul considerations? So those three age-old questions of site acquisition get pinched when we're talking about a coverage solution in a very defined space. The scale at which some of the technical solutions must be deployed also challenge the single solution approach. Dealing with one landlord over multiple sites or submitting zoning applications for a small cell and a macro cell in the same jurisdiction requires an increased amount of coordination and clear messaging because you don't want to necessarily have conflicts in the two. So those are very important from a new site build perspective. I think on the modification side of the house, you'll continue to see capacity improvements focused on existing network assets. And I think the big challenge there will be space. While we'll continue to see a carrier push towards software-defined networks and adding capacity outside of new hardware, we know that the hardware remains an essential part of the network and must be upgraded or expanded to stay ahead of the capacity curve. Tower infrastructure will be challenged to meet this demand and from a structural perspective, and we'll start seeing constraints on rooftops and other type of co-location applications that limit the hardware installation. What we're really seeing is an effective way to address this is looking at a holistic approach over an entire area. That how can we improve capacity via enhancements to existing embedded network, and a combination or a complement to that enhancement with a new small cell, DAS, or even macro application.
So when you say an entire area, how big of an area are you meaning?
It could be a network improvement in a jurisdiction. It could be defined by the carrier as a specific area of capacity concern, whether it be an urban core area, a specific zip code, or a specific set of sites. We really see the carrier defines that type of problem, and we look at a holistic solution to solve that problem. So it's not necessarily just one new site build or 3 small cells. It's a combination of everything.
Okay, great. And one thing I think is interesting to talk a little bit more about is the municipalities. It seems to me that everyone is becoming more aware of the appetite for wireless data, and I'm wondering if any of the municipalities that your company works with are maybe getting a little more receptive to the idea of small cells in their cities as they realize how much people need to use their mobile devices.
Yeah, we do see that, and there is further education that needs to be done in certain areas, because sometimes that isn't the only solution or the best solution for our customers. So yes, they're certainly more receptive. I think as consumers themselves, the folks that sit on the boards understand the need for coverage, and they're starting to have a clear message of capacity as they use. As Joe mentioned a little bit earlier, the data is increasingly being used at an incredible rate, and that'll continue to grow. So I think it'll force those questions within those jurisdictions longer term. You're still going to have challenges though as you get closer to population centers or put your network closer to people.
Right. It seems like the most challenging areas are also the areas that may need it most, right?
Correct.
So Joe, I know that you do foresee more urban deployments, small cells and DAS, but I think you've actually done some research into which cities may be the next cities that carriers target for some of these small cell deployments. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. We do some modeling here because, Martha, we publish a lot of forecasts for how many base stations will be deployed, how many small cells, how many DAS networks. And one of the tools that we use in trying to analyze that is that we look at the data density in terms of the gigabits per second per square kilometer. And so when you look at downtown New York City or San Francisco, you have a fairly high density of traffic there, especially near a subway station where people are waiting around for their train and watching videos and doing Facebook. That's where we're noticing over the last 2 to 3 years that the video phenomenon over mobile phones has really caused data to start becoming more spotty. You know, that subway station now has a much higher peak traffic, and you know, compared to the freeway, where we used to focus the attention of our coverage from our tower on the freeway so that people could be talking on the phone as they drive. Now we have hundreds of times or thousands of times more capacity requirements right near the subway station where people are sitting around. And so it's an interesting phenomenon where, as I say, we're seeing more spotty requirements for traffic, as well as increasingly peaky demand through the peak hour of the day. So as we analyze all that, we do see that there are certain cities, Boston, New York City, a few others, where there's some carriers that are starved for spectrum, but they have very high density of traffic due to the way that people move around and take trains and things like that. So based on that, we can make some predictions about where these small cells will be deployed.
That's great. And we're also hearing that sometimes the makeup of a city's population can influence planning. San Francisco, I think, is a city that has a large number of millennials, and I think Verizon said that was a target for them and that was one of the reasons. So I don't know if that's something you track as well, but I hadn't thought of that. But different age groups tend to be much more focused on texting and downloading video than others, right?
Yeah, I hadn't thought of it in terms of age demographics, but certainly in San Francisco there is a higher data usage than in many other places. So we have a high density in San Francisco and Palo Alto and certain places in San Jose. So I think there are pockets like that that are very tech friendly and people that use huge amounts of traffic.
Right. All right, thank you. Okay, well, at this time we're going to move to talking a little bit about infrastructure convergence and indoor coverage. And I do want to mention that we may have time for questions from the audience. So if you do have a question for our panelists, please use your GoToWebinar control panel and type it in. And if we can get to it, we will. Infrastructure convergence is a key part, I think, of indoor solutions. And Alan, I think that this is something that you've worked with a lot at Spire. So can you give us a little bit of information about what this means for enterprise deployments?
Sure. We have definitely seen a convergence between the two, and we're in a unique position to see it from both sides of the house. We have seen the need in our wireless services to bring in more of our own wireline infrastructure to help with things like Wi-Fi deployment for enterprise customers, as well as to help, as well as looking in the future for things like voice over Wi-Fi and areas like that, where it just serves as a natural extension to our macro network and in the needs that, to meet the needs of those enterprise customers and to meet the needs of really just our network in general. We've seen on our fiber side of the house, we've seen the opportunity in many areas where we'll have a deployment that goes in, enterprise deployment to bring a maybe gigabit service or something like that into a specific building or area of a city, and find that it also normally fits. It can fit nicely with what we need from the wireless network and serve as maybe a quick or a better way, easy way to get a DAS system in place, because we'll then have the fiber backbone already going through the area, as well as a way to really drive home the use of get the full use out of that fiber network as we deploy it. So I think we're definitely seeing that, and I think, as mentioned, small cells right now may not always show to be the best cost scenario, but I believe, you know, future that those costs continue to drive down, and I think that these types of convergences and the opportunities to take advantage of what's out there already from a wireline infrastructure will really help with some of our wireless deployments.
Absolutely. And you do have some interesting and innovative things that you're doing with some of your enterprise customers. Can you maybe give us one example there?
Sure. Probably I would say one of the prime examples is sort of blending our services together. We've got enterprise customers in our data center that maybe came to us for an enterprise solution. They needed a place to either have, you know, maybe a DR offsite, something like that, but then at the same time they had other needs for things like hosted exchange, and we're able to use that data center as a place to bring those needs together. So we were able to take what they needed from, and you know, what the overall enterprise market demanded, as far as I need not just server storage, I don't just need a cloud solution. I also may need IP voice, and I may need even hosted exchange into this. And how does that hosted exchange make it to my device? You know, what's the mobile device management piece there? And you know, we're able to tie all of that together into one nice, neat package for them.
Okay, great. Well, a lot of these services require very different skill sets than the macro network jobs require. Jason, can you give us a little bit of information about changes that you're seeing in the skill sets required of the wireless workforce?
Well, yeah, I think we're looking at you know, at Smartlink, we're really focused on how the back office, the IT, can help support the network deployment. You know, all in all, with the infrastructure consolidation, we're really seeing that while the relationships may change, and to your point, the hats may change, there's still a need for capable resources that have experience deploying networks that can jump into that and provide solutions. So, you know, while we do see conversions, it's certainly new opportunities. And while it may change a traditional network deployment kind of workforce and change a bit what they do, there's still those standard basis for the deployment of networks, and that experience can really help move in this direction, we think, very quickly.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. We do have one question from the audience that I want to stop and address quickly because we kind of already talked about it. There's a question coming in about public-private utilities already having infrastructure that can be used for small cell deployments, and are there examples of holistic approaches that include utilities? The only one that I've heard about that kind of fits that model, again, is Verizon in San Francisco, and that has been covered on rcrwireless.com. Does anybody else have anything that they have that they want to share about utility infrastructure being used for urban small cell deployments?
Yeah, I can touch on that, and I think the answer is yes. I think it's all of the above, right? You're looking at what is the best solution long term for the network. So our utility structures in play, both transmission and distribution, absolutely. Right-of-way structures such as light poles, absolutely. So I think you're looking at a whole host of solutions. I think what we're really getting at with a holistic approach is not limiting yourself to one specific focus solution. Let's look at the whole piece and try to make the best decision for the network as a whole.
Okay, all right, great, thank you. Okay, let's move on and talk a little bit about Wi-Fi. Joe, you touched on this earlier, but I think that you want to share more information specifically as it relates to enterprise deployments.
Well, you know, Wi-Fi is an interesting thing to bring into this because we've been deploying infrastructure for mobile services for a long time, and there's a well-established trend there. The Wi-Fi market, I mean, on the one hand, mobile is where there's a lot of money spent. The end user spends money with the service provider, and then that money flows into the equipment and services to install it. The Wi-Fi mode is carrying more data now, but there's hardly any revenue involved. So it's this strange market dynamic where we find a lot of operators wanting to support Wi-Fi to make their network less expensive. In other words, to carry a lot of traffic over the unlicensed band in some way. But they don't want to spend a lot of money on deploying the infrastructure because there's just no way to get any revenue for it. Just to give you, some statistics here, in our recent research, we found that about $900 million were spent on carrier Wi-Fi infrastructure, something like that, with the cable companies and the mobile operators putting equipment in the field for Wi-Fi hotspots, but there's only about $270 million of Wi-Fi service revenue. So that market is absolutely upside down. The service revenue should be more than what they spend on equipment, right? And so I think the way that we get out of that is with things like license-assisted access or LTE Wi-Fi aggregation, LAA or LWA. So that's where we can use the unlicensed bands to carry the data and send the bill to the customer as if it was LTE data. And so I think that's the way the industry is going to evolve, and some of the business models are going to go in that direction. Having said that, I think the infrastructure is going to have to support both modes. So as we roll out these small cells, we're going to have to over provision the backhaul because we're going to include pretty heavy bandwidth on the Wi-Fi side along with every small cell. And it may not be just a 20, 30 megabit per second kind of a small cell. It may turn out to be a gigabit per second, including all the Wi-Fi that's happening at the same time.
Okay. Alan, I know that you have worked with Wi-Fi a lot in the enterprise. Do you have anything to add here?
I think that's mainly. I think one of the other things that we would add to that is we see more and more need for customers wanting information, and we have enterprise customers coming to us, and they want that as an extension of the other services that are offered. So they see Wi-Fi as just a standard way to connect to what we're already offering them as far as maybe a DIA service or something like that today. So I think that's going to be one of the roles that that we'll end up playing as well, is we'll need to offer that at times as part of our overall service package that the customer needs.
And I'm guessing that you must carry some of the smartphones that support voice over Wi-Fi?
We are actually, we're doing some work with voice over Wi-Fi right now, and we do see that as a very viable solution to help expand the wireless footprint.
Right. Joe, I'm going to go back to you, and just I'm curious about how you see that playing out, in the context of LAA and LWA, because certainly the larger carriers I think would like to see things go that way, but I think at the same time maybe some of the smaller ones would like to focus on voice over Wi-Fi and maybe investing more in Wi-Fi, and as I'm sure you're aware, there's a little bit of a battle going on, part of it playing out with the FCC. Do you feel strongly that we're going to see all the carriers moving towards moving LTE over unlicensed spectrum, that's the way this will end up, or it's too soon to say?
I think all the operators will have some strategy to use the unlicensed spectrum. After all, it is free spectrum, and if you don't use it, you're just throwing away a valuable asset. But as you pointed out, the companies that have the strong LTE networks are going to want to stick with their story about the quality of LTE and using LTE control channels to improve on the Wi-Fi performance. So, for companies that have the strongest LTE networks, you can look at them moving toward license-assisted access, where every data session is anchored on an LTE control channel, and 90% of the data may fly over an unlicensed band, but it's still anchored on an LTE control channel. It's the smaller operators and regional operators and others that will be more inclined to do LTE Wi-Fi aggregation, where it's essentially using whichever signal is the strongest, and it'll migrate from LTE to Wi-Fi depending on which signal is available at the time.
Okay, and then what about non-traditional providers like Google, or some companies that may have another very strong revenue source that has nothing, that isn't really mobile service, but that are now offering mobile service, and then competing with the carriers. Do you see that coming on stronger in the months ahead, or do you think that that's just something that is never going to really take off in a meaningful way and compete with the carriers?
Well, I think it's big danger signals for the big operators. I mean, if you're charging $80 a month for 10 gigabytes, and Google's coming out with a service that's a lot cheaper than that, or Public Wireless or Scratch Wireless or any of the other Wi-Fi based calling services, I think that's a real danger sign as far as ARPU in the United States. That's something I would be concerned about if I were a large mobile operator.
Yeah, I would agree. Okay, at this time we are going to move back and talk a little bit more about the macro network, specifically tower and antenna technology. This was a major part of the report that we just finished up. And Alan, I'd like to start with you and get your perspective on antennas atop the towers. I think there are several reasons that we're seeing more weight and more antennas on the towers, and I'm just curious if that's what you're seeing as well, and what you can tell us about this trend.
Sure. I think we are seeing that a good bit today, and I believe that we've got some good future options maybe to alleviate it to some degree. The one thing that we definitely do see, and I think probably a lot of the tower owners will tell you that they see as well, is definitely a change in weight and the loading. And I know we as a company and tower owner and many of the tower companies really keep a tight eye on that. But I think there are some things that, there are things like multi-beam and multi-frequency antennas that are really, they're trying to help offset that. And I think as we continue to move and we get more things like that going, you're going to have that offset help in the future with LTE and more RRHs on top of the tower, and now some of the other, some of the newer pieces of equipment also requiring RRHs up the tower for non-LTE services. The weight and the loading seems to continue to slowly climb, but I believe that we've got some things coming out that will hopefully help with that.
Do you think, I know that a lot of investment is, as we've talked about, focused more on capacity than coverage, but do you see sometimes the need to build entirely new towers just because the existing ones are getting so overloaded, or it's not really to that point yet?
No, I think in some areas we've definitely seen that. And I believe even some of the municipalities and other areas saw the same thing happening and really started paying attention to how many towers were going up. It's not always just a matter of, did the tower fit my RF plan? Did the tower do this? In many cases, you're seeing mod costs that meet close to building a brand new tower, and if you've got an opportunity to make better service and to provide better service by having something like that in an area that's 100% suited for you instead of something that fell in a search ring, then I believe that definitely helps. Okay. Now, what about as the antennas migrate towards 4x4 MIMO? Joe, I know that you've told me a few things about how this could increase the number of antennas needed on top of towers.
This is coming. 4x4 MIMO is something we've talked about for a while, but it hadn't happened because the smartphones didn't support it. But in the research we're doing, we're starting to see antenna solutions and now chipset solutions that support 4x4 in the handset, and so that means that the mobile operators are going to start to deploy 4x4 transmitters on the towers as well. it's going to take that trend that Alan's talking about with more weight, and it's just adding more transmitters and more RRHs on top of the mix. So absolutely, there are improvements needed when it comes to efficiency and weight efficiency for the equipment.
Well, when do you think that we'll start seeing enough of this to where it will actually be? I mean, I think right now it's not propagated that much in the handsets. Is that right?
Not much yet, because we're just seeing samples from the chipset companies now for 4x4 MIMO. So I think it'll be a year from now before you really see commercially available handsets. So there's a lag time that goes along with this, and always an interplay between the infrastructure side and the handset side. But I expect 2 years from now we're gonna be hearing about mobile operators deploying 4x4 in certain cities. They won't have to do it nationwide, but where you have the urban centers and they want to beef up capacity, that's just another tool that they can pull out of their hat.
Okay, great, thanks. And since we are back on towers, I did want to reference a question that's come in from the audience on tower safety. Is there any automation of inspections? I'm not quite sure what that's asking, but I think it's referencing ways to standardize inspections, and I would refer you to the National Association of Tower Erectors for that. I do know that there is software that's often used in the field that is part of the inspection process, and safety may be a part of what that software can report on. But again, I really do not have an answer for that, and I think that the National Association of Tower Erectors might be a good source for that. Okay, moving on to new sites with an eye towards co-location in the future. Jason, is this something that you're seeing as carriers plan their sites going forward?
Yeah, and I think we look at this from the perspective of balancing the pressure triangle of quality, network quality, time to deploy the network, and cost to not only build but operate the network. So co-location in its broadest sense, we see is always going to be part of the planning for new sites. Existing structures, whether it be towers, rooftops, utility structures, and so forth, have to be part of the plan to achieve capacity requirements in a timely manner, and also from a quality perspective. We do see cost, the star of cost rising in that equation, because we do believe that the pressures on operating expenses will impact the willingness of carriers to select traditional tower infrastructure. The quantity of new network elements that need to be added in the traditional expense rates really don't pencil out with the need to densify the networks and the volume. So with more tools in the toolbox, we do see a lean towards non-traditional applications that can provide significant cost reduction overall and use advantage long term. So we do think there's going to be with new tools out there, with small cells, with DAS deployments, with looking at networks holistically, that there's going to be a look towards alternative co-locations, utility structures, poles, rooftops, on the side of buildings to achieve the network need.
So are some groups reaching out to landlords that have holdings in a lot of different cities to try to start that process? You're talking about private companies.
Absolutely. We're seeing that. The earlier question about utility companies, right? That's a source of structures utilizing FCC pole attachment rates, which is a huge cost savings to the carriers. There are bulk in local levels and in some cases national levels with building owners, asset holders of even smaller buildings, retail buildings, and so forth. And we see that trend will continue.
That's very interesting. Okay, great. Well, let's as carriers do try to deploy in these non-traditional locations, do you think that we'll see radio sharing? I know that Joe has pointed out that carriers are willing to share towers, but not radio equipment. Joe, why do you think this is so far?
This has been pretty much a worldwide thing. The whole idea of RAN sharing has not gone very far, and what I've seen is that mobile operators are willing to share passive things, the concrete, the chain link fence, the tower itself. But when it comes to something that their competitor might upgrade the software on, or might change in some way, they get very nervous about, what would those changes do to my network.
So you mean like a small cell? Sorry to interrupt, but you mean like a small cell? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, like sharing a small cell or sharing a remote radio head on a tower. If there's a software upgrade to that radio head by company A, what does that do to the performance for company B? And that becomes very difficult to manage. We've solved that with neutral host systems in the United States. We have companies that own a DAS system and operate that independently, and they've been able to satisfy the operators that they can be independent in that way. So I think to the extent that we have third-party companies that come in and own the radio equipment, then that might be possible. But it's very difficult to get the operators to directly share with each other.
Well, Alan, what would you say about that from the carrier perspective? Are there a lot of good reasons for not sharing radio equipment?
Yeah, I believe that's true, and I think what was just mentioned is a key driver behind that. We really want to make sure that we have complete control of our end customer experience. Okay. And as mentioned, if there's a software upgrade that you weren't aware of, or something like that that's done to that site that negatively impacts your network, you really want to ultimately be able to either, one, be the one that was doing it to begin with, and then two, know that it was going on, or be able to address it quickly and not feel like your hands are tied with someone else holding the keys to that.
Okay, all right, good points. All right, well, this will conclude our discussion for today. And at this time, I'd like to thank each of our panelists and give them a chance to make any final comments if they'd like to. Joe Madden is Principal Analyst at Mobile Experts. Joe, we really appreciate all your insights today.
Well, thank you, Martha, and it's great to talk with Jason and Alan as well. It's a changing industry, so it's great to stay in touch with everyone.
Thank you. And Jason Campbell, representing our sponsor today. Jason is Vice President of Services at Smartlink. Jason, it was great to learn more about Smartlink, and we really appreciated all that you had to say. Do you have anything final to share with us?
Yeah, it was great being here, so thanks so much for having us. We really appreciate it. And these are exciting times, so we're looking forward to the future here. And again, thank you for having us. Appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, thanks for being here. And Alan Jones has been our carrier representative. He is Senior Vice President at Spire Wireless. Alan, you had great insight today. Thanks very much.
Martha, thank you again for letting us be a part of the presentation today. We enjoyed it and like sharing our insight with everybody else in the industry.
Yeah, I think everybody learned a lot. Thank you all very much for joining us. I'm Martha DeGrasse with RCR Wireless News, and this will conclude the webinar.